What happens to these incredible legacy brands when the founder who wants to retire, what happens? Do they continue or do they just vanish?
In 2010, singer-songwriter Ben Montague founded the North American Guitar, a boutique London shop with 3 guitars on the wall. What began as a hobby slowly became TNAG Global, now one of the largest dealers for vintage instruments in the world.
I had a deal didn't work out in the end, and we set up a business called the North American Guitar. But it was a hobby, really. It started off just as almost like a bit of fun. Then when I kind of came out of the music side of things and realizing I was actually better at business side than doing the music, I decided to kind of really put all of my attention into retail side of the business.
Ben's mission is simple: preserve what makes these legacy shops special and ensure they thrive after their founders step back. By the end of this conversation, you'll understand how the vintage guitar world actually works, what makes an instrument worth trusting, and why the most important thing you can do before buying a vintage guitar is find the right person to buy it from. Stick around. I'm Bobby Owsinski, and this is the Inner Circle Podcast. Obviously, it's not true, but I hear from some people that the age of the vintage guitar is over. That a lot of younger guitar players don't much care. How have you found that to be the case?
That's a great question. I would say no, not at the moment. I mean, we're so fortunate. I mean, obviously, I'm currently at Norm's, but I spend all of my time in Nashville, and the thing that makes me the happiest about what we have at the store in Nashville, the Carters, is you see whether it is a mum and a daughter or a father and a son buying an instrument for the first time, or you see those collectors coming in and buying their 100th piece. And I say that, you might have heard me say that a couple of times, but it really is the truth. You see such a wide range of age walking through the store and buying instruments. And also, I think that when people think vintage guitars, people automatically jump to those crazy prices that we're seeing at the moment. And that's not, again, that isn't always the case. You can buy great vintage pieces, and not have to break the bank. We have some phenomenal player grade stuff. In fact, I just bought an awesome, J45, which was completely beaten to hell. And, one of the guys, Jake, at the store, came to me and he was like, "Dude, you've got to buy this." And I was like, "Oh, and it was complete. I mean, inside was completely messed up. I think it's a 46. And he was like, "I will tidy it up for you, but you've got to get it." So I was like, "Okay, great." And it's now like my favorite guitar. And I think I paid $3,000. It's a lot of money, but to what they're going for now, I was like, done.
Well, a player's guitar is so much different than a collector's guitar in that, you want people to play it. And when people get joy from playing, that's the big thing.
Nothing makes me happier than when you have these guys that are, big collectors, but that they're playing those instruments. And because the beautiful thing about what we do is we're a consignment business. I mean, you look at Carter's and there's 2,500 instruments on the floor, and 85% of those are on consignment. And so you see a lot of the customers, rotating instruments through us because we have low fees and, we're able to help them out and do good deals for them. But when an instrument comes back in, you can see that it's been loved and that it's been played, and that everybody likes that. It's when I get the really primo pieces that are completely mint that you want to keep, in a case. I totally, for an, asset class value and all of that stuff, I totally get it. But you got to remember that they were built to be played and loved. So yeah, it's nice to see when they are.
I have a friend who's a collector, and he has a 63 Strat. It's beautiful and it's pristine. It still has the tags on it. And he put it up in his wall and he said, "Look, it's a piece of art." And it's true, but that guitar will never be played, and no one will ever know what it sounds like.
Well, the thing that again I love about the vintage world, and when you see something that's been truly loved over the years, even with cases, like when you walk through, we have a place called Caseland where everything is stacked right the way up to the top, and when you see these instruments, it's like, well, who did they serenade? Where did they travel? What were they sold for? What were they bought for? You know, what's the situation around them? And that, I think, is anything that is a collectible item, that is, you know, in the vintage world, whether it's a clock and my godfather was a clock dealer, an antiques clock dealer. And he used to talk about just that. It's like what the time, who was looking at that back in whatever the year was, you know, and I think that's what people love. And they're buying into something that has got history and value towards it.
How did you get into this?
So I originally tried to do the music thing. I think that's kind of like,
Yeah, it's a given, right? Yeah.
I'd always been buying and selling guitars at university. And, in 2007, I actually came to Nashville for the first time. A very, very different city then. And I was lucky enough to write with a bunch of people, and I wrote my first record. And then I came back to the UK and I did that for a period of time. But again, I was always buying and selling guitars. So my dad loves instruments and loves guitars. And I was, you know, brought up on the Stones and the Beatles and Clapton and Cream and all the kind of greats. And from there, I did the music thing. I was lucky enough to do lots of touring, had a deal. Deal didn't work out in the end. And we set up a business called the North American Guitar. It was actually in 2010 over a cup of coffee. And it was a hobby, really. I mean, it started off just as, you know, almost like a bit of fun. And then when I kind of came out of the music side of things and realizing I was actually better at, you know, maybe the business side than doing the music, I decided to kind of really put all of my attention into the retail side of the business. And we had nothing, man. I mean, there's this picture of us in me and my colleague then, a guy called Michael, great guitar player, in this tiny little room with like 3 guitars on the wall. And we were focusing more on like the boutique stuff. So we were, you know, looking at like the Bourgeois and the Santa Cruzes and all those kind of instruments, and some of the really small workshop luthiers as well, like Jason Costal. And then that just built the business up, really. I mean, we dived into the content thing when it was pretty early on, and, you know, created a good Shopify. Actually, it was the first store was on Big Commerce. Believe it or not.
Remember that? Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so, you know, just did the content thing, and slowly but surely started doing more and more consignments and trades and bringing in these beautiful boutique instruments and a couple of vintage pieces every now and again. And it just slowly built, really. It was always a family business, and, you know, just the love of just music and the love of guitars. I just always loved guitars. And then weirdly enough, in 2019, I was coming back from a NAMM show, because I used to go to the NAMM shows, you know, do the microphone thing, walking around, interviewing all the luthiers. And I used to love doing that. And my wife and I, and my very young children at the time, and my daughter would have been 3 and my son would have been 1. We were coming back from the NAMM show, and I got an email from a customer called Craig, and it just said, "Opportunity in Nashville. Are you interested?" And that was it. And obviously I had the store in London, and it was starting to pick up a little bit. And I just wrote back and said yes. And I got back to England, and I said to my wife, "I'm going to go to Nashville and just see what this thing is." And met this amazing woman called Kim Sherman, who was the owner of Cotton Music. I met Kim, and just immediately Kim and I had this connection, just the love of the instrument. And I remember walking around the store, tiny little store in Houston Street in Nashville. Originally, Cotton was in Hillsborough Village, where Richard Cotton opened it. And they'd moved it to Hillsborough Village. And she had I reckon there was probably about maybe 150 guitars in the room. And I remember walking around with her, and I'm thinking, you know, you just met somebody, you don't know what do they want, how do you value the business, and all this sort of stuff. And I went, "So how many of these guitars do you own?" And she goes, "I own that one." And I went, "So what are these?" She goes, "They're all consignment." And then that's really where we kind of like, that's what I do in the UK, and that's what you do here. And so we did a really very quick kind of deal, which is we set up a company called the North American Guitar Nashville, and we partnered. And then COVID happened. So I had the UK and I had Nashville, And then COVID happened. And before we knew that COVID was going to be the boom that the industry experienced, I was kind of left with the pretty, scary, fact that I've got these 2 stores across the Atlantic. And I'd always wanted to get into the US. I'd always wanted I realized that the guitar market was every time I used to come to America and go to the shows, I used to always say to my wife, I just wish we could open something in America, because it's such a great, it's a beautiful and amazing country. And, they're just rich with history and rich with, musical history, and just all the best luthiers at the time were just all from America. So, my UK friends are going to slap me now. Anyway, so we decided then that we were going to reduce everything to Nashville. So it was, I still have one guy called Richard, who's a dear friend of mine still. He was kind of heading the sales, and then we moved everything to Nashville. And that was it really. We then just started, building the company over here. And then a couple of years later, picked up the phone to Walter and said, hey, would you be interested in partnering or merging or whatever it may be? And I think he was at that transition where he wanted to retire. And then we bought Carter's in 2022. And then the goal was always to kind of put together the 3 brands. So we wanted to put Cotton Music, Carter Vintage, and the North American Guitar under one roof. And that's what you guys see today in Nashville.
And then Norms comes along.
The Norms thing for me is quite an emotional. I mean, I love that man like you wouldn't believe. He's a phenomenal human being. And we've been talking it's about 4.5 to 5 years. And I think that once I'd kind of acquired Cotton Music, and I'm so proud now that Kim is probably the finest guitar salesperson in the world. I mean, she's just absolutely, and throughout our business, it's all about trust, transparency, honesty, obsession with the customers, making sure the customers because that's how you have repeat business, is just by treating the customer well and making sure that you're looking after them. And she's just personifies that. But once we've done that deal, and then the Carter's deal, for me, it was that light bulb moment, which was like, what happens to these incredible legacy brands when the founder, who might not have an exit strategy or wants to retire, what happens? Like, do they continue, or do they just vanish? And so when I met Norm, back in 2022, probably for the first time, I was lucky enough to sit with him in his house and watch the documentary before. It was like 4.5 years ago. And man, I tell you, I was like, just met this guy, and there's like tears coming down my face trying to, but it really kind of made me realize that, the guitar industry that we love today, and the reason why we're all here, aside from the instruments, is because of these incredible stores and retail spaces. And, whilst, we're in a world where we can buy online, and we should buy online, as long as you're making sure that wherever you're buying, the customer is getting the best experience and getting great return policies, and they're being looked after, you still want to make sure there's somebody at the store that you can pick up the phone to. You want to make sure that you can trust that person. Oh, I know, because everybody's got their guy, don't they? Everybody has the guy that they trust and the guy that they go to. And if that person is a really great salesperson and really trustworthy, and they don't have that instrument in the store, you'll find that they'll call up one of their friends in another store, and they'll say, hey, I've got a friend of mine that's looking for this. Do you have one? And I think that the stores are such a critical part to what we do. And so when I was able to, when Norm and I picked up the conversation, last year, just very, very humbled to be a part of his legacy and to continue it for many, many years to come.
Hey, quick pause. Have you ever felt like your mixes are close, but just not quite to the level that you hear from the pros? The truth is, even with today's powerful home studios, it's the techniques that make all the difference. The Mixing Engineer's Handbook, now in its 6th edition, walks you through these techniques step by step, from EQ and compression to immersive audio and the latest plugins. You'll also hear directly from some of the world's top mixers through exclusive interviews and bonus content. If you want your mixes to sound polished and professional no matter what setup you're working on, scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the show notes. Now, back to the conversation. Buying a guitar is so personal. I would never buy an instrument that I couldn't play first. Now, that being said, I think what you just said before is important. If you have someone that you can trust, that knows your tastes, that knows what you really like and how you feel about certain instruments, you can almost trust them to come up with something for you and then do it by long distance. Where otherwise, I would never dream of buying something from, the Guitar Center website without trying it, because there are certain instruments that are just magic.
100%. And I think the kind of click and buy, although we see it, and from a business standpoint, that's fantastic. But I think you want to talk to somebody. You want to have an engagement with somebody. And even way back in the early days, we called the North American guitar TNAG. So way back in the TNAG days, I was always, because I realized that online sales was the only way that I could grow the business. And so I was always looking at what are like off the shelf tech that I could use to improve that. I think we were like one of the very early adopters to chat functionality. Then this is a true story. So, my wife was pregnant with our daughter and I was looking for a car for her. And I went online and I looked at this, she was born in 2016. So this would have been around 2015. And I'm online and I find this car and I look at it and I write a little, can I come and see this car? And about half an hour to an hour later, I get this email and it's a link and it says, please click this link. So I click the link and this guy pops up and he's got his phone and he's like, hey, Ben, thanks for your inquiry. This is the car. And he's kind of showing me the inside of the car. And I said to him, hey, I'll come and see the car tomorrow, but what is that? What's that platform that you're using to do this? He goes, oh, it's just a thing that we have in all of our chains across. It was a Volkswagen dealership. And I said, can you tell me it? So I contacted the company and they said, oh, we only do automobile industry, but there's another company that does it. And it was such a game changer for me because I thought to myself, if I could reach a customer in America or in Germany, and I could put a video up and say, hey, Bob, this is this D18 from 54. I know you like these things. Let me just play it to you. And I would show them the instrument and I could sort of play it to you and say, hey, look, I think you're going to love it. Let me send it to you. I can either send it on approval or you can put a deposit down. But let me, we've got a relationship. Let me send it to you and you can try it. And that builds this trust that is, it's kind of like cemented. And so I used to get up at like 6 a.m. I'd cycle into my shop in London. I'd get my tripod out. I'd pick out my favorite guitars and I'd get this phone and I would just do that to customers. And you build this friendship with people because you start learning about what they like, what they don't like. You start, because everybody, and I used to say, if you don't want me to do it, I won't, I'm not pestering you. They were like, no, I love it. What's the back and sides like? Are there any cracks? Are there any this? So, I feel that, weaving that back to now, we do that in Nashville. So we have there's a great piece of software called BombBomb. And my sales guys, when you request a demo on the CVG site, it will take you to a form and you fill out the form. The link is already there. And then one of my guys will come in, they'll see it and they'll take the guitar and they'll come in and they'll show you the instrument. They'll talk about it. And if you like it, keep it. If you don't like it, just ship it back. And I think that is a kind of middle ground between someone buying an instrument in Texas from California or Nashville from New York. And so I think going back to what we were saying, having that human experience and not just the click and buy is critical to what I think the industry needs.
Ben, what's the hot instrument right now? What's everybody looking for?
Well, I mean, the premium echelon is obviously always looking for bursts. I mean, we we get a lot of those coming through. But I mean, Fender and Gibson are creating some really spectacular custom shop pieces right now, and we're seeing a lot of those guys coming through. And I think that a really great, I mean, I'm a J200 guy. I love J200s. I always find there's people wanting, early 60s, late 50s J200s. That's always a very popular vintage piece. But yeah, I couldn't say which is the one thing that everybody's looking for. We're lucky enough to have lots of customers looking for different things all the time. It's really our job just to find out what they want or what they're trying to fill in their collection, or what tone or what soundscape they're looking for that we could try to look for. In fact, I've got a friend of mine. He also has a dealership in the US and he was messaging me saying, "Man, I don't play enough anymore because I'm always working." And I was like, I know the feeling.
Yeah.
And he said, "So I've decided today I'm going to get back into playing." And I used to have a 60s 335, and that's what I'm looking for. And I was like, okay, I'll look for one for you. And funnily enough, I found one. I just sent it to him, and he's like, okay, let me think about it.
What is the Holy Grail? Is it still like a 59 burst?
Oh yeah, with that, that or a D45. I mean, we had a super rare Ken McKenzie. It was a D45S, which was one of three that we just recently had in that we did some great content on. But that was very, very beautiful, very rare. And I've got a great team in Nashville that did some work on it to get it back to how it should sound. But yeah, I mean, I think it's always the pre-CBS, the bursts. So it's the guys that everybody knows. I mean, there's going to be, your listeners are going to, know a lot more than I do about what is out there. But I think the main thing really is when you're buying a premium piece or any piece, actually, I mean, it doesn't matter what the price point, because it's all relative. You need to make sure you're buying it from somebody that you trust. You need to make, especially in the vintage world, man. I mean, you've got to make sure you buy something from somebody that you trust. And when you buy it, if you've got a return period, make sure you know that return period really, really well, so that you're able to, within that time frame, get it checked by somebody you trust. I think that's the most important thing. I think as the vintage market is expanding, and we are seeing it expanding. I mean, you just look at some of the prices that are happening right now, and especially the most recent Jim Irsay collection, which I think that took everybody by surprise.
I was just going to ask you about that. Yeah.
I think, as you see these premium upper echelon pieces start getting the values that they're getting, and really becoming, like you were saying, that the kind of the asset class in the almost like fine art, really. You just got to make sure that you know what you're buying, and you've got people. If you don't know what you're buying because you're new to the market, you need to make sure that you know people that know what they are, and you trust them. I definitely feel that there is a secondary market for these premium pieces that's starting to appear, which happens in a lot of asset classes. Initially it's just the core market, and then suddenly, and that's exactly what happened most recently with the Christie's collection for Jim Irsay. You could see that there's another sphere of buyers that are coming into this, with, incredibly deep pockets.
Well, okay. Let me ask you about that. Do you find that these buyers, and I'm talking especially for a collection like Jim Irsay's, are they buying for the value of it, or are they buying for the nostalgia of it? So in other words, it's like, oh, I'm buying this because so-and-so played it, rather than, oh, I'm buying it because I think this is going to make me money down the road.
That's a great question, man. I think it's got to be a blend of both. I mean, when you look at some of the prices, there must be people that are buying at that price point for, I just want to have it, and I want to have it in my collection, and I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to be on it. Are they looking at it as I'm going to buy it at that price, knowing that it's sold for, I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head what the Strat sold for originally, but I think it was around 3, and then it's selling for like 14. Is that person buying it to then sell it for more than 14? I believe they must be. But how long are you going to have to wait for that appreciation to the next stage? Because it really wasn't. It said a lot. That collection really, to me, I didn't watch all of it, but I did watch a chunk of it. Because the period at which the instruments were bought by Jim to being sold was actually not that long, and yet the values from an investment standpoint, what a very smart man, it jumped significantly. But I think, I guess they would be holding on to it to see it appreciate further. But it's just how long is it going to take for it to appreciate further? Because I feel that was very, very at the top of the market.
Ben, what don't people know about vintage instruments that you wish they did?
God, that is a really good question. I think that the vintage market for so long, and again, there are many, 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 many people that know far more than I do, right? I would caveat that. But I think that there's, as with anything that is got a lot of energy and movement behind it, and prices, you can see from our data, we see prices increasing, right? You are able, I don't know, I'm using the word fraud, but untrustworthy events can happen. Okay. And people can come into the market thinking they're buying something and it's not. So I think that one thing they should know when buying an instrument is, are the pickups original? It's all the same, the stock things. Pickup all original? Is the finish original? Has it been oversprayed? All these sorts of things. And if they don't know, then they need to go to somebody to get it, authenticated. And it needs to be a trusted, reputable place. What's really interesting, I think, is definitely a big sign of the times, which I think is fantastic, is there are these new companies coming through that are third-party authenticators, where you can buy an instrument and you can take that instrument to them and they will perform a deep analysis that is data-driven on an instrument. And I think it's very interesting, and for new people coming into the market, definitely something that should be looked into. It's the same thing happened with watches. It happened with cars. It happened with all different asset classes. That to have trusted authenticators that haven't got skin in the game. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not a dealer, or But again, comes back to what I was saying earlier, is that, for us to be able to sell the volume of instruments that we do, Carter gets in, about 450 instruments a month. And we on average, we sell anywhere between, 380 and 420 guitars a month. So we have a whole string of authenticators. If, an instrument arrives, and it doesn't matter what the instrument is, everything gets looked at. So our instrument arrives, it gets skewed. It then goes into contract with the seller. Then it will go into authentication. Then it will go into description. Then it will go into specs. Then it will go into media. Then it will hit the website. And the reason why, we are so, diligent on every phase is because we have to make sure, and we want to make sure, that if you, Bob, are buying a guitar from us, we're trustworthy. So you don't have to have that worry of, am I buying what I think I'm buying? Or, am I buying the right price, or whatever it may be? So to weave back to what the question, I think it's not about what they don't know. It's just about making sure that when they're acquiring anything, that they trust the person that they're buying from. And if it's a new transaction, make sure that you have somebody that you can rely on to help you.
What's your personal collection like, Ben?
I don't have a huge amount of instruments in my collection. I having done the music thing for a while, done the gigs, I got rid of a lot of my guitars, just because I used to feel so guilty not playing them. And I'm a real believer in that the instruments have to be played. I got a few. I mean, I think about 5 or 6 instruments that I rotate all the time. A couple of J200s. I just bought that J45, and I have got a beautiful 51 J200, which is my absolute. I just love it.
I'm the same way. I used to have a lot of instruments, and the less I played, the less I felt I needed them. And it's like, I'd rather this go to someone who's going to use it rather than just sitting here collecting dust.
The only reason why I would start buying more, and this is the truth, is because my daughter is now getting into that stage where she's starting to play more. And
great.
I had this awesome thing the other day where she went to her guitar lesson and she came back, and I'm sure you remember this moment, because I definitely do, when, it's like the fingers hurt and you're trying to figure it out, and you're just like, oh, and you're like, I don't want to do this. I don't get it. And then one day it just all clicks, and you're like, oh, I got it. And I saw her have that moment. She came in and she was like, Daddy, I've got to show you this thing on the guitar. And she has never said that to me. So she gets out her guitar and she starts showing me this finger picking pattern. And I was like, let me show you what that can do. And then I played her like a bunch of different songs, all with the same finger picking pattern. And you could see her mind just go. She just didn't. And so for me, seeing that, so I try not to push my kids, into the guitar music world, but when they start picking up organically, I'm like, yes.
What don't people know about you that you wish they did?
I live and breathe what I do. I love what I do. I feel very grateful to be the steward of these brands. I feel like I'm the custodian of Walter and Christie's name. I'm the custodian of Norman's name, and the custodian of Cotton's name. I think that it's very easy for people to cast a judgment on somebody when they don't necessarily know the background of how you get there or what you do. There's an assumption of, oh, it's this. So I think the only thing I would say is, judgment without fact is misleading. So, therefore I hope I'm judged by what I am trying to do and what the customers experience, rather than, an assumption of it's going to be negative, which is, and I understand that because we have experienced it with when you buy these lovely, beautiful legacy brands, and you're coming into it with the greatest will in the world of like, how do we make this better? How do we make this better for the customer? How do we keep it going? You hope that the work you do to get it to a place that you think is better for the customers, that it actually is better for the customers and they enjoy it. And I feel pretty grateful and, proud of what we've created in Nashville. I mean, I really do feel very proud. I walk some days when the cameras are off, I'll walk into that store and I'll actually kiss the floor. That's because I'm so proud of what we've built there, and taking what Walter and Christie built and continuing that. And I think the most important thing is the people inside the company, because nothing happens with one person. It is all about the team of people. And the Nashville crew is and the Norms crew. Obviously, I'm getting to learn the Norms guys every day, but the team of people that we have in Nashville, from intake to shipping to sales to the front of house to whoever it may be, is a phenomenal group of people. And so I guess I would love people to know that I'm very proud of those people.
Well, I'm so happy that you're the steward of these fine brands, because it would be a shame for them to go away, to fade into the ether, as many brands do. And you're going to be a excellent steward for these going forward. I
really appreciate that. And I just want to say that I'm a big fan of your podcast and what you do.
Thank you.
Musical instrument industry is a phenomenal group of people. And you think of the impact that they have on the world and on music. I mean, just take Norm, for example. Everybody sees Norm as the kind of godfather of the vintage market, but just think of the music that the instruments that he found and that he sourced went on to create. What would have happened if he hadn't have done that, So, and it's the same with the guys that are making the guitars. It's the luthiers. It's the people that are, photographing every day. We've got a guy called Keith at the store, who's our sort of head of brand at Carter's. And the guy photographs, I think his record was, it was something outrageous, like 5,000 photographs in a month.
That's amazing.
Jeez,
Can't even imagine.
And he's like, he's like a laser and just dedicated to that. So it's an amazing group of people. It's an amazing community. So you're doing an amazing job sort of assisting with the voice of that.
Thanks for listening and being in my inner circle. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, you can send them to questions@bobbyowsinski.com. You can also learn all about the latest in music, audio, and production news, and find out about openings for my latest online classes at bobbyowsinski.com. This is Bobby Owsinski. I will see you next time